Daniel Sports Center, we go over a college football game preview and prediction on the 2022 Gator Bowl matchup between the Notre Dame Fighting Irish and the South Carolina Gamecocks. Both teams have had great seasons getting to this point. Notre Dame, a team that's improved significantly down the stretch. This team finished out the regular season at 8-4, and they're taking on a South Carolina team that's coming into this matchup with 2 straight wins over major national contenders. They knocked off Clemson and Tennessee to finish out the regular season, and they're playing as well as anybody right now. Should make for a great matchup. We'll be covering a full game preview and prediction on this matchup here today, starting with your team trends. Notre Dame lost to USC on the road 27-38 to finish out the regular season. So USC, considering the position that the Trojans were in going into that matchup, at least Notre Dame put up a fight, but USC is a talented football team, and in the end, a disappointing loss to finish out the regular season. But I'll say this again, Notre Dame really improved over the course of the 2022 season. This was a team that lost to Marshall back in week 2, and honestly, when this team was 0-2 to start off the season, things were not looking good for the Fighting Irish, but down the stretch, this team has overall played pretty well. And as for South Carolina, they beat Clemson 31-30 to finish out the regular season. What a finish to the season it was for South Carolina. They knocked off Tennessee and ruined their playoff hopes 63-38. What a game that was for South Carolina. Tennessee, if they would have beaten South Carolina, Tennessee had Vanderbilt the next week, they would have been pretty much a lock for the college football playoff at that point. And South Carolina ruined those hopes in that very night. But yeah, the Gamecocks then the next week go to Clemson, beat them 31-30 like it's nothing. And suddenly the Gamecocks are 8-4, ranked 19th in the country. What a finish the season it was for South Carolina. When this team lost to Florida, they literally lost to Florida 38-6. Heading into that Tennessee game, it looked like, when they were 6-4, it looked like this team was going to struggle even getting to a decent bowl game. But here they are, getting to the Gator Bowl and facing off against Notre Dame. Pretty good situation for the Gamecocks. Games will be on Friday, December 30th in Jacksonville, Florida. Your kickoff is 3:30 p.m. Eastern. Spread's going with Notre Dame here by 2. So the Fighting Irish are favored by just a couple points in this matchup. Over-under is 52. FP also going with the Fighting Irish here, 67.6%. So Fighting Irish are favored barely in this matchup, despite some of the changes that have happened. Obviously, Drew Pine, the starting quarterback for Notre Dame for the majority of the season, he at least led Notre Dame to success this year. He is in the transfer portal, and he is, I believe, headed off to Arizona State. So that's something to keep in mind for Notre Dame. He's gone, but it seems as if Notre Dame could be landing Sam Hartman, the Wake Forest quarterback who's had a great year. I'd definitely say Sam Hartman is an upgrade over Drew Pine. But either way, we're talking about this game. It looks like Tyler Buchner is going to be the starter for Notre Dame here. He did lead this team to that 0-2 start with losses to Ohio State and Marshall. But series history, Notre Dame leads at 3-1. South Carolina won the last game, and that one was back in 1984. Stat comparison for this one, Notre Dame is 37th in points per game, 25th in points allowed. They're 101st in passers a game, so the passing situation kind of has been the weak spot for the Fighting Irish this season. Drew Pine, the primary starter, he's thrown for just over 2,000 yards, 22 touchdowns, and 6 picks. So, his stats aren't terrible, but, that's definitely not been the main strength of this team. They're also playing without Michael Mayer, who has declared for the NFL draft. That's their star tight end and also the top in receiving for this team. So that's a brutal loss there, not having him in this game. And so, yeah, Notre Dame's not really playing with their ideal lineup heading into this matchup. They're 38th in rush yards a game in the free yards allowed. They're 18th in passing, 38th in rushing. So defensively, this team has been overall great this season, allowing 22 points a game, which is a top 25 in the country. As for South Carolina, they're 40th in points per game, 82nd in points allowed, 34th in passers a game, 99th in rush yards, and then for yards allowed, they're 37th in pass defense, 111th in rush defense. So the matchup is pretty good for the Notre Dame offense, a strong rushing team going up against a team that's not very strong in rushing defense. South Carolina is allowing an average of 192 rush yards a game, but their pass defense hasn't been terrible this season. Meanwhile, Notre Dame, they're strong on both in both areas defensively. And for South Carolina, this is a team that is better passing the ball than rushing it. The top rusher this season has been Marshawn Lloyd, who's rushed for just over 500 yards and 9 touchdowns, so no major standout in the backfield for South Carolina. Obviously, they got Spencer Rattler, who has really turned it on the past couple of games. I mean, the way that he played against Tennessee, that's the Spencer Rattler that we expected to see last year and this year as well. I mean, Spencer Rattler, when he first came onto the scene at Oklahoma, he was outstanding to say the least. And so he was expected. If you remember back going into 2021 when he was with Oklahoma, I mean, he was expected to be a top 3, top 5 quarterback in the country heading into the 2021 season. Obviously disappointed. And, I mean, moving to South Carolina, I mean, it was a slow start to the season for Spencer Rattler and the Gamecocks. But, I mean, the way that he played against Tennessee, if we could see that every week out of Spencer Rattler, that's exactly the player that we know Rattler can be. But we just haven't seen that very often, and he's just been too inconsistent. I mean, his stats are, I mean, they definitely could be better. He turns over the ball too much, that's for sure. His touchdown interception ratio is 16-11. So it could be better, but I mean, we know Spencer Rattler can be an outstanding quarterback, and we've seen that potential even this year. So, I mean, he's a quarterback that can really play at a high level, and once again, he's just too inconsistent. But yeah, I mean, this team they still are 34th in passers a game, so not terrible offensively. Recent matchups: Notre Dame, they lost to USC, number 6 team in the country at the time, 27-38. They knocked off Boston College 44-0. Beat Navy 35-32. Beat Clemson 35-14. That was a huge win. Clemson was in college football playoff position when that game was played, and Notre Dame has proven that they are. And of course, they knocked off Clemson even a couple of years ago and ruined their playoff hopes back then as well. So yeah, Fighting Irish, a huge win for them there. And they also beat Syracuse 41-24. Syracuse was ranked 16th in the country at the time. As for South Carolina, they knocked off number 8 Clemson 31-30. Beat Tennessee, number 5 team in the country at the time, 63-38. Still just an outstanding win. And you look at how they performed the week before, it becomes even more stunning that happened as they lost to Florida 60-38. And that just proves how unpredictable college football really is. I mean, I feel like just no one would have taken South Carolina to beat Tennessee in the way that they did as well. They scored 63 points in that matchup after only putting up 6 points against Florida. I mean, just a stunning turnaround there for South Carolina. They beat Vanderbilt 30-27. Also lost to Missouri 10-23. That was an ugly loss as well. I mean, you look at the Gamecocks, even in the earlier parts of the season, I mean, this team wasn't all that impressive. It was just those last 2 games that we saw out of the Gamecocks that really were impressive. But I mean, they lost to Arkansas. They got beat up by Georgia. They really didn't have, I mean, they beat Kentucky, who was ranked 13th in the nation when they played them. Also had a win over Texas A&M. But yeah, easily those 2 last games. I mean, Spencer Rattler, if you look at his stats during the season, not impressive at all. But then he had 438 passers against Tennessee and 360 against Clemson. I mean, if he can play that way once again every week, this could have been a really good and potential national contender in South Carolina this season. Key points: Notre Dame 8-4, starting quarterback Drew Pine transferring away. He's off to Arizona State, so it looks like Notre Dame's going to be focusing on having Tyler Buchner as the starting quarterback. They have improved significantly over the course of the season. Michael Mayer is also gone, so Notre Dame once again is playing shorthanded. They don't really have their optimal or their best lineup heading into this matchup. Something to keep in mind here. But for South Carolina, coming off of wins over Clemson and Tennessee, Spencer Rattler has shown how he can play. I mean, once again, you look at his stats in those last 2 games of the season. If only we could have seen that all season for South Carolina, this team would potentially be in a position, maybe playing for a New Year's Six game, if we could have seen that more this season out of Spencer Rattler. But in this position, we've seen it out of him the past couple of games, and we'll see if it continues into this one. But defensively, South Carolina has had trouble at times. That is something to keep in mind. This team is allowing an average of 28 points a game, which certainly could be better. So, I mean, even if Spencer Rattler did play the way that he has the past couple of games all season, this defense hasn't been great at a lot of points. So, I mean, I don't know if South Carolina would have been a national contender, but, I mean, defensively, I mean, you never know. If you have a good energy on offense and the offense is getting it done, that can help the defense that can push the defense to be better as well. But that said, let's get the prediction here for Notre Dame and South Carolina coming up here in the Gator Bowl. This one is a game to look forward to for sure with all the storylines going in, and this is tough to predict as well. But in the end, I'm going with South Carolina to win this game 31-24, so I'm picking a slight upset in this game. I got the Gamecocks winning this one. I just think, Notre Dame not having Drew Pine. Drew Pine's been the starter for the majority of the season, and they're going to have Tyler Buchner starting at quarterback. You look at how Tyler Buchner played when he was the starter. He led this team to an 0-2 start to the season. That included a loss to Marshall. And Drew Pine came in, brought a new energy to this team, and this team has really played generally well down the stretch. And so, that's not the sole reason why I'm picking South Carolina here. It's also the Gamecocks. Now they play the last 2 games of the season. They're going to have some energy coming into this game. I'll guarantee you that. And Spencer Rattler, if he can play at that same level, I just don't know if Notre Dame is going to be able to keep up with South Carolina. And I think the Gamecocks defense gets it done as well. Holds Notre Dame to 24. And I'm going to take the Gamecocks to win this one 31-24. So I'll say 55% towards South Carolina. Definitely a close game that could easily go either way. Over under is 52. I'm taking the over for this one. Especially if you think South Carolina is going to win, I'd encourage taking the over just because Gamecocks defense hasn't been great this season, and I could see South Carolina scoring decent amount of points if they win this game. That's how they're going to do it. And so I've got the over and the Gamecocks covering the spread in the end. But super intriguing matchup. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this game, and I appreciate you guys watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.